Welcome to the video. In this video we're going to be taking a look at this thing here. This is a Runcam OWL. Now we've used quite a few other Runcam cameras back in the day. They tend to be the style of action camera, and Runcam have started to produce FPV cameras too. So we've got hold of one to have a try with. So first of all we'll show you what's in the box, and then we'll take it out and we'll show you some flight footage, because this is called the OWL because in theory it should be a very low lux camera. But before we get into the detail, I need to say a very big thank you to the team at gearbest.com for supplying the camera, and also I'll put a link in the description down below the video if you want to have a look at this particular one. Now we've got a PAL version here, and this is what comes in the box. You just get the camera itself. It has a little cable connector at the back with 3.3 volts ground and video out, and the other end of it goes into two different connectors, one for power and one for video, and there's this gubbins in the middle. Now this is actually to convert anything between about 5 to 24 volts down to the 3.3 volts that the camera is going to work with. The other nice benefit here, of course, is that it does mean that we actually have a little cable that we can plug in, which will give us an RCA connection. Now that's good if we wanted to connect it directly to anything that takes RCA in. However, for me, what I'm just going to do is just going to pull the red wire out of the middle of here and pop it into the middle of this connector, and then this connector can do everything, both power the camera and also provide the video back out as well. Now the manual itself is this single little bit of paper, so we have exactly what we've just talked about on the front. Field of view is about 150 degrees, which is probably on the slightly long side. We have all of the specs at the back. So now we've got all that stuff, let me plug it into an FPV transmitter. Probably going to use something like this. We are starting to get some really nice cheap and cheerful kit here that works really well. Once I've made that adaptation to that cable so that all three wires are in here, it'll just be a case of plugging those two things together and it will be done. So let's put it on a model, let's take it out to fly, let's see what it's like in a couple of weather conditions and how it copes and performs as an FPV camera. So here's the rig that we ended up using. So there is the camera at the front. We 3D printed like a little support for it. There's the FPV transmitter at the back, and under that black tape is that single cable that we modified, and we've got a little IonWay antenna on the top with a little protector as well that we also 3D printed. And as you can see in the bottom right hand corner, the image from this camera in daytime is really nice and it works fine. And you would expect that from somebody like Runcam that's getting quite good at making these kind of little cameras now. Now this is the Runcam 2. We've done another video on this, you can go and watch the review, which is more like the action cam style. But the whole point of this camera is how it works in lower light conditions, and it's going to be difficult for me to test that with it on a model. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach both of these side by side to something, and what we'll do is we'll take them out in lower light conditions and we'll shoot them side by side and see what the extra sensitivity of this little OWL is over a Runcam 2, just for comparison. Now I won't be able to fly in those conditions easily, so I'll just walk around with it and we'll actually see how much better it is. From some of the other videos that are on YouTube, there are some really nice comparisons out there, so if you're interested in seeing more, if you Google for the OWL you'll find it. But I wanted to just test here and also do my own little demo of how it performs. So I'm going to put these side by side. We're going to wait for the lighting conditions outside to change a little bit. So we'll go and film as the sun is setting. We'll see how the Runcam OWL copes with changes in light saturation and the lower light conditions. And then we'll also shoot a little bit after it's gone dark. Now it's coming up to the nice part of the year here in the northern hemisphere. The sun isn't completely going down, there's still a bit of light in the sky, so it will be interesting to see the difference between the two. So let me stop the video, go and get that footage, and we'll come back and have a look. The image on the left is the Runcam OWL being captured in the DVR in our Fat Shark Dominator V3 goggles, and the one on the right is our Runcam V2 sat by its side, and that's recording locally onto an SD card in high definition. So we are seeing a slight difference in resolution, obviously, because we were looking at a DVR actually in the goggles, and it's a very good representation of how it looked inside the goggles versus something that's recorded locally in HD. At the time, we've got 3 or 4 of these segments coming just for comparison purposes. You can see here that the lower light conditions, we shot this in the middle of the afternoon. It was warm, very overcast, still a little bit bright, but as we pan around you can see that the OWL is doing a couple of weird things with colour in this slightly lower light condition. But in terms of the view, the crispness, how it's working, how it's exposing the sky, the cameras are performing similarly. What you're finding is in the shadows that are in the Runcam V2, the OWL is still managing to pick out contrast and detail that the Runcam V2 just isn't able to pick up with this slightly brighter situation. So what we'll do now is we'll go and put this away, and we'll come back and have a look at this again when it's a little bit later in the day towards the end of evening. So now we are in the back garden. It's about 8 o'clock, so it's still bright here in the UK. We're starting to get into summertime, so it's very overcast. It's starting to get darker here, and the clouds have built up a little bit, as you can see, and the images from both are quite similar. You can still see again that we're getting a slightly different colour saturation out of the OWL. It isn't anywhere near as lush looking as the Runcam V2, but what's starting to happen is as we're losing some of the colour saturation, we're actually still picking up a lot of detail. And you can see in the tree, for example, that we're getting images of what's in the shadows, where with the Runcam V2 we're really starting to lose that detail. So definitely interesting here. We're seeing an odd effect as the light's starting to go. So let's come back out just before it gets dark, when it's really twilight, and we'll have a look at how the two cameras perform. So now we're really starting to see some big differences. It's about 9 o'clock now. It's getting quite dark. Sunset here is about 9:30, so the sun is very much on its way out, and we can see here that what's happening is the OWL has almost gone to black and white now. So although we've lost some of the colour, we have gained a lot of detail. So this seems to be interesting. The OWL seems to flick to almost a black and white camera as it's trying to get more and more clarity for us. So we're going to come out one more time after sunset. We'll come out when it's dark, so half an hour after the sun has set. It doesn't get completely dark here in the UK because we are in summertime, but here you can really see the difference between how the OWL is performing and how the Runcam V2 is. Now the Runcam V2 is pretty much useless for flying in these situations, but you can see all the detail. I don't think this camera is infrared, but that's the kind of feeling you get when you're looking around. And on the right hand side we have no detail at all, but on the left hand side with the OWL we can still see all of the plants in the garden. And not only that, but they're coming through nice and crisply. There isn't a lot of smear. We've completely lost all the colour now, but you could actually fly like this. So I don't think this would work if it was total pitch darkness in the middle of winter where there's no light at all. But you can see here that when the light gets really low, the OWL seems to flick into a different mode, really boosts up the contrast and drops the saturation for colour, so you can still see what's going on. So let's go back to the bench for our final thoughts. This is a great little camera. If you are looking for a camera that's going to work in lower light conditions, or you're flying around, or you've tried FPV and your existing camera is struggling in those lower light conditions, maybe towards dusk or when you're flying in winter, this is going to be a great option. I've been really surprised at how good it performs in these really low light conditions, coming out after sunset where it was very dark enough so some of the little LED lights were coming on in the garden, but you could still see all of the detail. Now with the naked eye, you could probably see about the same amount as the Runcam OWL was showing you for comparison purposes, but the Runcam V2 just completely lost the plot and you couldn't get any detail at all. Would I use this all the time? Probably not. For me, the odd things happening, particularly with the greens in the way that the colour saturation is handled, isn't great for everyday flying. When it's really bright, it doesn't seem to have that effect. It seems to be part of how the Runcam's handling the loss of light and flicking into a lower saturation, kind of a higher contrast mode in order to preserve an image when it's getting a little bit darker. But definitely something to consider if you like flying around at dusk, or if you want to try it. Remember though, if you're going to fly like that, I definitely stick lots of LED navigation lights all over the craft to just help you spot it when you're bringing it into land. Thanks to GearBest for sending this to us to try. There's a link in the description if you want to take a look. Thank you for taking the time to watch that video. There are lots of other videos on the channel and they're carefully ordered into playlists, so you may find that there are other videos on this same subject that you can go and watch. So I would recommend going into the playlist area of Painless 360 YouTube channel and looking around and seeing what there is. You never know what you might find. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and happy flying.